Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. So I changed my setup. I'm actually down here in the basement right now. But in this video, I wanted to talk about like Venom in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because this is a really, really cool prospect, right? This is a really interesting idea because there's a lot that they can do with it. All right, here's one of the things. Sony, as far as I'm aware, has the whole Venom thing, right? Like, I don't know the details of the contract that was worked out between themselves and Disney. And in reality, I think you'd have a hard time finding the wording of it. I mean, I'm sure that contract is under lock and key, right? I mean, that thing's hidden away. It's like the formula to Coca-Cola, right? I mean, I remember as a kid, people used to talk about how secretive that was, and I don't know if it's still a secret, but in any event, Venom in the Marvel Cinematic Universe presents a really interesting scenario, because what you're talking about here is the notion of taking what's arguably the most popular Spider-Man villain and then throwing him into the MCU. But the reality of this is it may create like some conflict, right? Because when you think about this, like Sony's just started their whole Venom thing, and as far as I'm aware, it's supposed to be a trilogy, and the Venom line of films is supposed to kind of set in stone Sony's like villain verse, right? Like they're basically going to be focusing on villains instead of focusing on heroes, because they don't have Spider-Man, and outside of Spider-Man, they don't have anybody else. So literally all they can do is focus on villains, which is why I'm kind of under the impression that like Marvel and Disney own the rights to Spider-Man like entirely, like that's it. But in any event, if you take Venom and you throw him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's a zillion possibilities they can do, right? Because what Sony, in order for Sony to really do Venom effectively, which is to say to do Venom in film form and actually explore the Venom universe, they're going to need more than what they have right now. Right now, like in Marvel Comics, the way it used to be, right? This is the way the Venom symbiote, the concept used to be, that the Venom symbiote was basically a costume. Well, not really a costume. It was just kind of an organism that existed on a planet during the event of the original Secret Wars in 1984. And then Peter Parker, in the process of trying to find a new costume, stumbled upon the symbiote, and the symbiote, and it basically bonded itself to him. And when that happened, he basically ended up, going back to Earth once Secret Wars was done, brought the symbiote back with him. And then in turn, it wasn't until like Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four told him, this thing's actually alive. And that's why you were having these quote unquote nightmares where you're going out in the Venom symbiote and doing things, because he actually was, he just didn't realize he was effectively sleepwalking and being controlled by the symbiote. And then of course, Peter Parker cast it off of him and it bonded itself to Eddie Brock. And then the rest is history, right? Like, I mean, Eddie Brock as Venom went forward as like Spider-Man's most popular villain. I say most popular, probably not the most significant, but certainly the most popular. I think Green Goblin, Norman Osborn is the most significant, but in terms of popularity, Venom's right up there. There's a reason why you've never seen a Green Goblin movie, right? Like, you saw him as a villain, but you've never seen a standalone Green Goblin movie. And in all honesty, I don't think you ever will, because, I mean, what's the Green Goblin if he's not fighting Spider-Man? And so, I mean, I guess people say the same thing about Venom, but then you got Agent Venom and things like that. But that's kind of where I go into this, is because what you're doing is you're talking, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you're talking about how things changed in Marvel Comics in and of themselves. Recently, by Donny Cates, the whole thing was reworked. And what you ended up having was like way back when you had this being called Null, K-N-U-L-L. And Null was basically this guy from like a different dimension, from like this dark, this void dimension, whatever it was, and showed up in the main Marvel universe. And then in turn was like defeated by the Celestials after crafting this weapon called the All Black Necro Sword. And then in turn, like the Celestials kind of cast him out or defeated him, but that basically led to him like creating the symbiotes. And then in doing so, like they basically spread throughout the cosmos. Now after his defeat and his supposed death, they had no leader. And so when they spread throughout the cosmos, that went into Brian Michael Bendis' run, Planet of the Symbiotes, during Guardians of the Galaxy, where basically the symbiotes kind of reworked themselves, became their own civilization, their own stories, legends, myths, so on and so forth, and basically became these kind of space knights, in the sense that like the symbiotes would normally bond themselves to a person, and they would go forward and become a superhero, basically somebody protecting their section of the universe, right? So like imagine it being something akin to like the Green Lanterns minus hard light constructs. And then of course that basically led to Spider-Man finding the symbiote during Secret Wars. And then because of the fact that he cast it off, it made the symbiote got mad at him, and then it bonded itself to Eddie Brock, and then it became a villain. And so like you're talking about like a total reworking of the symbiote mythos. But the reason why all that works is because you're talking about building up on a huge amount, on a huge legacy. Venom has had crossovers and dealings with the veritable who's who of Marvel Comics: Captain America, America, the Avengers, the X-Men, I think, like at some point along the line. I mean, he's like, you literally saw Spider-Man and Venom team up against Carnage during the events of Maximum Carnage. I mean, you've seen like a lot of huge, and even characters have shifted, right? Like most people know Eddie Brock as being Venom, but there are a lot of fans out there who will look and say Flash Thompson as Agent Venom is the best version of the character, right? Like Flash Thompson had lost his legs during the war, and then in turn, like when he came back, he basically had the symbiote bonded to him and then went forward and basically became like a good guy, right? Like that's really what he was. He was a person with a Venom symbiote being a good guy, and like he would talk to it and different things along those lines. And then of course, again, like later on, kind of building on that, the symbiote sort of became a good guy in and of itself. So there was a lot of development on the symbiote itself. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in order to apply the symbiote properly, I mean, it would take, you would really have to, you couldn't just bring him in for one movie, right? Like you couldn't just bring in Venom and then have him there for a single film and then that's it. You would need him for like multiple films, for like, you know, for really to be like a mainstay of the character. I mean, I don't know if I would make like a standalone Venom film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because you already have one, especially if it's one of these things where like Sony and Marvel are sharing him. And so like between Venom 2 and 3, he crosses over into the MCU or something like that. But with regards to the multiverse and with regards to the fact that, you know, Spider-Man's in Earth 616 now, according to the clip that we saw, this means a couple things. The first thing is that if Spider-Man is part of Earth 616, or really like if the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now Earth 616, then what it means is that everything in the comics is in continuity. Everything that's ever happened in Marvel Comics, depending on when it takes place, right? I mean, if the Marvel Cinematic Universe is like 5 years ahead of Marvel Comics, then technically all this stuff has not happened yet, right? Like, but you would have, but because of the fact that it's referred to as Earth 616, that basically means that like everything in the comics has happened. Now this creates a whole huge mess in terms of continuity and all kinds of stuff. So that's why a lot of people are drawing the conclusion that Mysterio's lying about it all, and just like he picked a random number or is like making it all up or whatever the case is, but like none of it's true, right? Like he threw a number out there randomly, and it's a, you know, kind of really on the nose Easter egg for Marvel Comics, whatever the case is. But grabbing Venom, throwing him in, I think it works, and it's an awesome idea. But the issue with this is that you run into some continuity issues with regards to what Sony's doing. It all kind of has to sync and match up, and you're basically talking about the idea of grabbing him and bringing him in from a different universe. And the problem with that is that it opens up a kind of Pandora's box of easiness, right? Like if we just open up an alternate reality and then we grab the Avengers and grab the X-Men and we throw them in, and we open up an alternate reality and we grab the Fantastic Four and bring them in, it takes away from the journey and the experience of being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Because what made it so cool was kind of seeing these small little Easter eggs and asking the question of like, how are they going to get them in? Where are they going to come from? The theory crafting, right? Like that was the fun part of it. There's a reason why YouTube videos get like millions of views by saying like, what if they brought them in this way or something along those lines. It's something that I love to do, and it's something that you guys love to do. By removing that element, it kind of takes away from things. And so in reality, I love the idea of Venom in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in truth, I don't ever really see it happening, because, you know, the only way to really make it happen is if like Sony gave up all the stuff to Venom and Spider-Man and everything, which they're not going to do, and it all went over to Marvel and Disney, which is not going to happen. And then in turn, like they totally rebooted the character, right? That's what they're talking about doing with the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. They're going to reboot and retool them all. The whole thing is going to be completely reworked and redone. And nothing, and it's going to be so starkly different from what we've seen coming out of Fox. There's going to be no confusion in terms of the fact of, you know, is this the same as like the Fox movies that we saw? There'll be no confusion there. It'll be like a total revamp. And so with that in mind, with Venom, you know, because of the fact that Sony just started, it doesn't make any sense that they would in turn give it all up, right? I mean, especially with Venom being kind of the foundation and the basis behind their entire like villain verse. So I don't know. I mean, it's a cool idea. It's a cool theory I've seen floating around the internet, but in reality, I don't really see it happening. There's no real way that it could, because it just doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't really seem to come together. But I don't know. I mean, you guys post your thoughts. You know, you guys are very, very vocal. You guys love telling me when I'm wrong, which is fine. I never said that I was always right anyway. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's a cool idea. It's an interesting idea. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.